And if you need any technical assistance, please put a message in the chat box. We would also like to inform you that this session is being recorded and broadcast live on YouTube. Thank you so much. And with that, I will hand over to Marian for opening remarks.
Thank you, Irene. I'm Marianne Bailey, the Senior Coordination Officer at the Minamata Convention Secretariat, and I'm really pleased to welcome all of you and all our speakers here today for this online side event prior to our 5th Conference of the Parties to talk about the specific international program for capacity building and technical assistance. This side event will underline the invaluable role played by the Specific International Program, or the SIP, in facilitating capacity building and technical assistance to support implementation of the convention. At its first meeting, the Conference of the Parties decided that the Specific International Program would be established for an initial period of 10 years, starting with the establishment of its trust fund, and then with the possibility of an extension for another 7 years. And because we just passed the midpoint of this initial term, the program underwent a midterm evaluation, and the findings of that were really quite positive in showing how the SIP has been responding to the really specific and urgent needs and work of the convention. So far, 24 projects have been approved for support through 3 rounds of applications, and we're very pleased to have 4 of our project partners here today to present some of the achievements of their second round projects. All 5 projects of our first round have been completed, and you can find terminal evaluations of 3 of those on our website. Some of the second round projects that we'll hear about today are also completed. The activities of the other projects from the second and third rounds continue to be implemented in accordance with their results-based project documents. I'm also really pleased to announce that just this week we've launched a dashboard on the convention website where you can find information about all the projects and the overall program of the SIP. And that was done with the extremely hard work of my dear colleagues Shariful Islam and Irene Rizzo, and other support from here in the Secretariat. So we're very excited about that. We hope you like it, and we'd love your feedback when you get a chance to look at it. So just very briefly to round this out, these remarks, the Specific International Program is pivotal to the convention's success and the attainment of its objective to protect human health and the environment from mercury emissions and releases. The SIP responds to the needs of our developing country parties and parties with economies in transition by providing direct financial support for the capacity building and technical assistance needs that they themselves identify as their priorities in enabling their full implementation of binding obligations. And the SIP is managed by the parties to the convention through the SIP Governing Board. And I'd here like to thank all the members of the Governing Board for their hard work throughout the years to ensure that really high quality and success of the program. I'd also like to express the Secretariat's deep gratitude to the 10 donor countries that have so far supported the program through their contributions to the specific trust fund. And those countries are Norway, the largest contributor, Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, the United States of America, Austria, France, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Denmark. And here I'd also like to note that the specific trust fund is open to contributions not only from governments, but also the private sector, foundations, non-governmental civil society organizations, international organizations, and academia. And our party applicants are also encouraged to draw expertise from the multi-stakeholder UNEP Global Mercury Partnership. The Secretariat also greatly appreciates the generous support of the government of Italy for providing a junior professional officer post in the Minamata Convention Secretariat for 3 years, which are unfortunately winding down after another year from now. So we remain hopeful that timely and robust financial resources and other resources will be allocated to the specific trust fund to enable the governing board of the SIP to launch the next round of applications as soon as possible. And as I mentioned, the governing board at this time, I'm very honored to be joined today by Ms. Tiffany van Ravensay of Suriname. She is currently co-chair of the SIP governing board, and she will provide some reflections on the SIP and then we'll moderate the panel discussions. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for being with us. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marianne. And thank you all for joining us in this side event today. From the moment I joined the governing board of the specific international program at its 8th meeting, I have been deeply impressed by the potential of the SIP in its role of facilitating capacity building and providing technical assistance to support in the successful implementation of the convention. As required by the convention and highlighted by the midterm evaluation of the SIP, the program is serving the needs identified by the applicant parties. It is therefore not only relevant for the fulfillment of the convention obligations, but also for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. As today's presentations will show, the SIP-funded projects have been supporting the national level implementation work that promotes collaboration across ministries, robust stakeholder engagement, and enhanced public awareness as parties undertake their binding obligations. The end of 2022 marked 5 years of operation of the specific international program, the midpoint of its initial term. During the remainder years of its initial term, I would like to see more parties to the convention taking full advantage of the program and its unique features to fulfill the urgent obligations under the conventions that lay the foundations to achieve the convention's objective. One of the features that makes the specific international program unique and appealing to applicant parties is its party-driven nature. The SIP operates under the direct authority of the parties to the convention through the Conference of Parties and is managed by the SIP governing board with members from all UN regions. This makes the specific international program directly responsive to the priorities, demands, and the needs of the applicant parties. Also, the SIP has a distinct role amidst various other sources of support. SIP projects can be designed to complement support that a party may be seeking from other avenues, such as the Global Environment Facility or the specific program on institutional strengthening, and they can be national or sub-regional. The generous contribution of the 10 donor countries have supported this program and enabled the launch of 3 rounds of applications so far, are highly appreciated. However, additional financial resources are currently needed to enable the SIP governing board to launch a new round of applications and to meet the demand for support of all eligible parties. The mobilization of timely and substantial financial resources and other resources for the replenishment of the specific trust fund remains a top priority and is urgently needed to allow the continued operation of the program and the launch of the new round of applications as soon as possible. I am confident that today's presentations will demonstrate the value of investments in the SIP. Thank you. I will now turn over to our panel discussion, and we have the project managers of 4 SIP projects of the second round of applications with us. Our first speaker or of our panel is Ms. Oluwatoyin Olabanji from Nigeria. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And Ms.
It's okay.
Ms. Olabanji is an environmental scientist and assistant director in the Department of Pollution Control and Environmental Health of the Federal Ministry of Environment in Nigeria. She is the desk officer for the Minamata Convention on Mercury and currently the co-chair for the United Nations Environment Program's expert group on mercury waste thresholds. She is the assistant project manager for the SIP project in Nigeria and will now deliver a presentation on Nigeria second round SIP project, capacity strengthening for implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. And I welcome you to my presentation. My name is Oluwatoyin Olabanji, and I'm the Nigeria Seed Project Assistant Project Manager. This afternoon, I'm going to give a brief overview of the Nigeria second round seed project on capacity strengthening for implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. My presentation will give a little background information and touch on the project output, the deliverables, outcomes, and impacts. It is important for us to note that the Nigeria SIP project titled Capacity Strengthening for the implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury built on the Minamata Convention initial assessment undertaken in Nigeria from 2015 to 2017 and addressed specific issues. It addressed specific issues with respect to the development of specific sectoral action plans, establishment of a Mercury information system, among others. The project duration was 27 months, and the total amount released to the government of Nigeria was 240,000 US dollars. The overall project outcome was to develop national implementation plans, sectoral strategies, and information tools to guide the implementation of the Minamata Convention's obligations. The executing agency was the Federal Ministry of Environment, Nigeria. And we also had project partners. We had the Ministry of Health, the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investments, the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, the Basel Convention Coordinating Center for the African region. I must mention at this point that the Nigerian project was very inclusive. The project had substantial involvement of all relevant stakeholders, including the private sector. The private sector was actively involved in the various project activities and provided important data and information that fed into the national action plans developed. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. Thank you. The project outputs are awareness raising and multi-stakeholders consultations conducted. The national implementation strategy and sectoral action plans developed, and the national mercury information systems developed. Next slide, please. Now, it is important for us to also note that the project produced 5 sectoral action plans, a national implementation strategy, and a Mercury information systems. The project produced a national action plan for mercury reduction in the cement sector, a national action plan for management of mercury supply sources and trade, a national action plan for environmental and health monitoring, a national action plan for environmentally sound management of waste. The National Action Plan on Mercury Added Products, the National Implementation Strategy, and a Mercury Information System. The project outcomes, as we are all aware that the value of any project cannot be measured without the success. And so the project outcomes as highlighted in the presentation slides, a coordination structure to facilitate the implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury in Nigeria, which includes clearly assigned roles and responsibilities, is established. Increased knowledge and capacity on mercury management among the decision makers and technical officers. Improved national capacity to process information and data on the control of mercury supply, use, releases, emissions, import, and export. This allows for tracking of mercury material flows and provision of support to decision makers. Improved monitoring, enforcement, reporting, and information sharing mechanism of regulatory agencies and stakeholders' capacity to manage mercury in an environmentally sound manner was also strengthened and enhanced. And so now the impact of the project. For us, the questions that we have asked ourselves dealing with this subtopic are: what positive changes do we want to see after the project implementation, and who benefits from what we have done? The chart that you're seeing explains everything, and I'll try to simplify it to us. The project produced sectoral action plans, as we can see, and established a mercury information systems. The action plans are living documents that will not just sit on the shelf, but will in turn help in decision making in the country. The national documents produced are very, very key and germane to decision making, and it will help in making decision, simplifying decision making. Already as we have seen the impact the project have made in the country. The project have brought together stakeholders, and they have been able to collaborate and share information. So the project has helped in stakeholders networking and information sharing. And we are also expecting medium and long-term impact. We are expecting that the project will further strengthen the institutional and legislative framework of the country. It will also help in accessing and establishing sustainable financing. The nation's capacities to set priorities will also strengthen. We've prioritized activities in the action plans, and we have access to these documents, and we can, at every point in time, make reference to it and pull out activities that we can use to better improve the environment for the populace. We are also expecting that the project would help in the effective implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury in Nigeria, and it will help in tracking the progress on mercury management in the country. The overall impact, the overall goal is to have a safe environment for the populace, and also to have the human health and well-being improved. So as you can see, the chart is very simple and it explains all that to us. The impacts are very, very clear to everyone. And so in a nutshell, that's the overview, a brief overview of the Nigerian project. And I want to use this opportunity to thank all the individuals that participated and who contributed to the success of the Nigeria Seed project. We are especially grateful to the specific international program of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, the United Nations Environment Program, for the financial and technical support. We also want to say a very big thank you to the Minamata Convention Seed team, especially the team assigned to the Nigerian project. We want to thank the project steering committee members, the consultants and project team members for the technical expertise and guidance provided by them. And so we also included some pictures for you to see some of the stakeholders reviewing the Minamata, the Mercury information system, stakeholders discussing, deliberating on the Mercury Management Information System and also the national action plans developed in the course of project implementation. And the last picture is the group of the project steering committee, the members of the project steering committee, and the project team members. At this junction, I want to say thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olabanji. That's a wonderful presentation. Now we will quickly move over to our second panelist, which is Ms. Christina Lesnik from the Republic of Moldova. Ms. Lesnik is a legal advisor with more than 15 years of experience in the Central Republic Administration of the Republic of Moldova. Since 2014, she has coordinated the visa-free regime with the European Union for Moldovan citizens, external assistance, and international cooperation in the field of internal affairs. From January 2018 to June 2019, and from March to November 2020, she was Deputy Prime Minister for Reintegration, dealing with the Transnistrian settlement process, and Chief Negotiator. She has also served as legal advisor of the Public Institution National Office for implementation of the environmental projects. She has extensive knowledge in the implementation of EU budget support in international projects and policy coordination. Among others, she has provided expertise to UN Women, UNDP, Council of Europe, Soros Foundation, and the Eastern Partnership. Ms. Lesnik is the SIP project manager for the project in Moldova and will present on support in the post-ratification process of the Minamata Convention by the Republic of Moldova by strengthening the capacity to eliminate and reduce the risk associated with mercury. Ms. Lesnik, over to you.
Good afternoon, dear chair, and participants. Thank you for this introduction and invitation, and also let me thank you for the work we have done together. I think this has been remarkable, and it has always been a teamwork between Moldovan authorities, the Secretariat of Minamata Convention, donors, partners, civil society, and experts. In these 3 years, we have seen the Republic of Moldova growing and evolving due to the SEA project implemented. I would like to use this virtual stage to thank you to the board for accepting our project and to donors, but at the same time to extend our gratitude to Romania and Germany for sharing their experience during this project. Today I will try to focus on a few success stories, but also on a few lessons learned from these last 3 years. Overall, the SIP project covers several dimensions, in particular 5 important objectives: enhancing legal, institution, and operational framework according to the Minamata Convention, capacity building and transfer of international experience and lesson learned, development of the infrastructure and substitution of the mercury measuring devices from healthcare sector with focus on women and children, and including appropriate communication regarding the interim mercury storage. The first one is on our national will to contribute to healthy and clean environment. It always seems impossible until it's done. The second, just to give a general background before I will try to mention about our deliverables and our results achieved, is to give general background about the current situation in the Republic of Moldova. The Republic of Moldova ratified the Minamata Convention in 2017, and Moldova is not a producer country. Since 2021, Moldova has an independent national authority, that is Ministry of Environment, dedicated to enhance legal and institutional framework, to improve international treaties and in the field of environment, and to support capacity building. Our national office was a legal entity under the Ministry of Environment that was responsible to implement the project in cooperation with other national institutions, civil societies organizations, environmental agencies, and other stakeholders. In order to mention, I would like to use these opportunities to share with you that actually based on the inventory assessment, the project estimated that 4 categories of the mercury we still have on the territory of the Republic of Moldova. And here in the mercury emission from mercury containing product, you can see that we have thermometers, sphygmanometers, lamps, and battery, including metallic mercury. According to the law on waste, mercury waste is the subject of the Article 58, while stipulated that management of mercury waste must be done in accordance with the Minamata and Basel Convention. So we have the legal reference in our legislation regarding to the Minamata and Basel Convention. Of course, the APR subject are battery and mercury relays lamps. Next slide. I would like to mention that since we started with our application, our legal legislation were improved and also developed. And I would like to mention that since 2018, you can see that we have a specific legislation regarding different category of the lamps battery that contain mercury component. And you can see that since we started with the SIP project, we have a new regulation regarding the industrial emissions. We have in 2023 the regulation regarding cement production, but we are at the final stage regarding the regulation on temporary waste disposal for the mercury product. It is important to underline in this case that since 1st January 2021, we prohibited the import of the goods and products that contain mercury. So this is one of the key issues that we can share with you. And we are proud to say that this was due to the fact that we started with the SIP project in the Republic of Moldova. Next slide. The third theme that I would like to mention is the partnership approach. This partnership approach makes us more credible and makes us different. The added value of the project was involving environment, health, emergency, education, and prosecution sector in cooperation for the implementation of the SIP project. Thus, several results were achieved, and you can see that we have viable data and findings regarding the current situation on the mercury waste in the Republic of Moldova. And we expected, based on these studies, research, inventories, to increase our operational capacity and to have the case management for each situation. We have today institution and professional capacity building because we have sit at the same time a table the people from different national institution, environment agency, people from other key stakeholders. We enhance legal and institutional framework in line with the Minamata and Basel Convention. We increased access to information, visibility and awareness campaign. And here I would like to mention that we involve not only the central public administration, but also local administration, mayors, people who serve local administration. We also have risk associated with mercury reduced because is to the fact that we prohibited to introduce in the Republic of Moldova the new product that contain mercury. And more than that, due to the C project, we could also to offer support to the medical institution with the substitution of the medical devices. And here I would mention 15 containers for storage of the mercury waste and about 200 thermometers and sphygmomanometers. Another subject of our results achieved was the cross-institutional cooperation. I would mention that de facto the project didn't cover a law enforcement agency, but they were on board with us because we have common goal and especially to create this health and safe environment. Next slide. Of course, each project has a theory of change, and our project already has a background because when we started the implementation of the project, we couldn't expect that we will achieve to disseminate the information. We couldn't achieve that everybody will be on board and we will not have the competition, but we will have the common goals. And I would say that the grass of the project that we implemented, now we have the legal framework dedicated to the waste management. We have professional trained and we respected here the gender balanced approach. We have also institutional framework. We have different strategies on communication. We have strategy for the collective and individual systems. We have the substitution of the mercury devices and equipment, and we have also solution for the safe temporary storage of mercury waste and interinstitutional cooperation. Next slide. One of the objects of our project is to inform, appropriate, not only the institution, but also the people, individuals. In this case, we started with educational system and we disseminated in the about 1,231 educational institutions the relevant information about the measure that should be in place to protect the people against different cases related to the mercury thermometers that are broken. We also inform about more than 31,000 teachers and more than 333,000 students that were informed how to avoid the risk linked with mercury waste. Next slide. An important issue in the awareness campaign was the positive messages. So with the expertise of the communicators, we tried to share in the virtual format, but also on the paper, different information regarding the C project, also to offer different solutions. And you can here see the postcard with different messages, but positive messages. So in the card, you can see in translation, this a free mercury country. You can see that the in the drugstore, you cannot buy the mercury devices already in Republic of Moldova. You can see what to do in case if you have a broken thermometers. Also how to protect you in the health and educational systems against the risk associated with the mercury. So we try to develop positive messages to the people, to the institution, and also to substitute the medical devices with mercury. I would say that COVID outbreak accelerated a little bit the process because actually this happened in different hospitals, medical institutions. But we would like to mention that in the medical institutions, such as Mother and Child Institute, we still have also the risk associated with the old devices that contain mercury. Next slide. An important message was how we can involve the people who can give more advice and people who can share this information. So what we did, we involved all the environmental agency, we involved civil society to disseminate the information. So we create a teamwork among environment agency and the NGOs dedicated to the environment to create the positive messages. At the same time, an important step during the project implementation is that the fact that we bought 15 containers were purchased for temporary storage and distributed in the health sector. Here you can see our how is the picture regarding the mercury containers that we disseminated in the two institutions, is the Mother and Child Institute under the Ministry of Health, and also at the National Public Safety Agency that is working with the people. Next slide. One of the key issues of our project is the fact that we organized a regional workshop in Chisinau, and I'm very glad to share with you several pictures. We have the president of the COP5, we have the people from the secretariat, and I would like to share that we had the chance to share between representative of different countries from the European and Central of Europe, the experience regarding the practical measures, the researches, also the standards regarding in the legislation. So for us, for Moldova that have a new path of the European Union integration, this experience was very relevant for us because actually we try to adapt our legislation according to the UN Convention, but at the same time to take into consideration the European Union path. Next slide. Before I will say thank you for the attention, I would like to mention that I'm confident the project contributed to support the government authority to adapt legislation to the EU and EU legislation on the mercury waste. But despite COVID outbreak and refugee crisis in Moldova, we were able to ensure the positive path of the project. Thank you to the Secretariat for guiding us and supporting us, and I would like to extend this special thank you to Marian Bailey, Isaku Toda, and Irene Rizzo, who was very flexible and very attentive to our request. And thank you for fruitful cooperation and excellent communication between our national authorities and Secretariat of Minamata Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation, Ms. Lesnick. We will now turn over to our third panelist, which is Dr. Linroy Christian from Antigua and Barbuda. Dr. Christian is a national of Antigua and Barbuda. He pursued his undergraduate and postgraduate studies at the University of the West Indies in Cave Hill campus. He holds a PhD and is currently the Director of Analytical Services in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Agriculture, Trade, and Barbuda Affairs. The Department of Analytical Services is responsible for the analysis of products for human consumption and environmental health monitoring. The laboratory provides analytical services to branches of government and the private sector. His additional roles and responsibilities include Chairman of the of the Pesticide and Toxic Chemicals Board, Chairman National Codex Food and Agricultural Technical, focal point for the International Chemicals and Pollution Treaties acceded to by Antigua and Barbuda. Dr. Christian is particular interest in public health issues and is keenly interested in the preservation of environment and the study of the impact of environmental pollution on human health. He is the focal point for the SIP project in Antigua and Barbuda and will present on the project facilitating capacity building with technical assistance and technology transfer for managing mercury in the Caribbean. Dr. Linroy, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening for those who joined from all over the globe. And thank you very much to the Secretariat for providing us this opportunity to present on this important project to us here in Antigua and Barbuda. And you could see the various stakeholders. Of course, the Biodiversity Research Institute was a key stakeholder, a key partner in the development and also the execution of this project. Next slide, please. And our main objective as it relates to this project would be to enhance mercury monitoring, the capacity for monitoring in Antigua and Barbuda, and to promote regional technical capacity enhancement in the area of mercury monitoring. And a key facet of this would be to establish the Caribbean Mercury Monitoring Network. As we recognize from the global perspective, the data from our region, particularly the Caribbean subregion, is somewhat limited as it relates to the global assessment of mercury and the trade and releases within the environment and the impact on human health. And therefore, this project sought to fill those gaps. As you recognize, the SIP projects are national projects, but we took the approach also of inviting partners from around the region, specific countries to join. And we're pleased that, as you will see, several countries have participated and have provided samples that were able to be analyzed. The principal agencies, of course, the Department of Analytical Services and the Biodiversity Research Institute, who conducted technical work as well as an analytical work, and also Environment and Climate Change Canada, who would have participated on the air monitoring side. The oversight and funding, of course, was provided through the Minamata Convention Specific International Program. And I certainly want to thank the board of the SIP for providing us the funding and seeing the relevance of our project and how this may impact not just the region, our nation, Antigua and Barbuda, but also the convention as it relates to effectiveness evaluation. The project was signed in 2020, and the initial duration was 27 months. We've had to, with COVID, obtain extensions, and I certainly want to thank the Secretariat, Irene and Marianne, for facilitating us and providing the guidance. Next slide. So the main objective here, apart from providing analytical data, would be to form the network. And I can say that now we have a functioning Caribbean region monitoring network for mercury. And there are similar efforts going on in Africa and the Pacific. And we see this as an opportunity to provide global work and to provide global data as it relates to mercury, where these sub-regional networks could aggregate their findings to the global level to be taken up as part of the convention. The red stars, as you can see from the slide, gives you a general idea of the spread of the network. So in the Central American area, we have Belize. Along the Caribbean island chains, we have Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago on the southern side. And then on the South American shelf, we have Guyana and Suriname. So a special thanks to these countries, again, for participating and for assisting us in gathering samples and providing much needed data. Next slide. So at our inception workshop, we would have put forward this matrix and indicated to countries that, what would be their national needs. And of course, this has to be in some way in concert with the main areas of focus within the convention. Well, as in Antigua and Barbuda, we're pretty much testing everything we can for mercury. And again, through the project, we would have obtained a direct mercury analyzer, which is a part of the capacity building effort. And main areas, passive air sampling, fish, birds, and cosmetics and human hair were the main areas of focus. But we do have some other areas such as sargassum. If you're aware, within our region, we have a significant influx of sargassum based on issues related to pollution and climate change. And we also have some interest in soil sediment. We have a fledgling BAT program that we've started as well. As it relates to other countries, the passive air monitoring, as you can see, is consistent across all countries. And here, some of these sites that have been established are supported both by Environment and Climate Change Canada and through the project. So specifically, the sites in Suriname, Belize, and Guyana were established and supported directly through the SIP project, and the other sites were supported through Environment and Climate Change Canada. So an excellent idea as it relates to cooperation and coordination that will extend way into the future and hopefully make this network a lot more sustainable. Fish samples, again, were a key biota species, indicated species that we had to test for mercury. And Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Guyana were all interested. Within the project, we collected samples from St. Lucia, and Antigua and Barbuda, and Trinidad and Tobago specifically provided the majority of the fish samples. For Trinidad and Tobago and Antigua and Barbuda, we focused on birds. And one of the main issues as well was cosmetics, because based on the Minamata initial assessment, the issue of cosmetics, and it is now the subject of a global project, it is of concern. So conducting the biomonitoring within these matrices and disseminating the information was seen as also key aspects to ensure that we engage with the public and we indicate to the policy level as well the changes that may be required based on current science. So on the next slide is somewhat busy, but the first aspect of the slide is just to give you an idea of the number of samples that were collected. So for cosmetics, we had just over 150 samples of skin lightening creams and other preparations that are used for fading or bleaching the skin, and which again is of very serious concern within our region and certainly within Antigua and Barbuda. We had just under 50 samples of bird feathers that were analyzed and also blood. We had a BAT program similarly with just under 50 samples. And we also had a human hair study where we partnered with one of our NGOs, Integrated Health Outreach, to conduct monitoring of human hair for mercury. And then we had the largest number of samples for fish tissue, over 260 samples that were submitted and analyzed during the period of the project. So just to advance the slide one. Now, this is just a snapshot of the data. We can have a presentation on each of these, which we did last week. We would have had our terminal workshop where we went through all of the data, and we had our stakeholders regionally and nationally who attended this workshop. But just as a snapshot, our magnificent frigate bird, which is our national bird, the blood and feathers that we collected were well within acceptable limits, and therefore did not represent initially cause for concern. However, a lot more samples are required, and we will certainly continue this monitoring into the future. We did have some results for one of our smaller localized species, which is a yellow warbler, and that contained mercury levels that were well in excess of what was expected. And when we compare it to other such species within the region, even within the wider region, as in the United States, these levels were actually quite high. And we see this as a means for us to conduct further studies within certain ecosystems, collecting additional samples, not just of the biota, but of sediment, to ensure that we understand how this transitioning of mercury within this particular species occurred. As it relates to fish, the main findings were actually quite good as it relates to pelagic species like tuna and mahi-mahi, and also some reef species such as snapper. The data were actually quite good and below threshold levels that the FDA EP of the US had recommended, which we are considering adopting within Antigua and Barbuda. We did see, of course, other species like barracuda with elevated levels across countries, and therefore it's one of those species that you would have to eat in a limited way, and that is a part of the messaging and how this may affect policy within countries, which fish species may be best for export and for consumption and general human health. So this type of information and data would be key to making policy level decisions and also just general day-to-day decisions that a householder would make in terms of what they would consume. If we advance one. Then we conducted a hair study of 165 participants in total, but we had 2 outlier samples that were very much off the charts as it relates to the level, but those were likely due to products that may have come into contact with the hair shaft, and at least in one participant, it actually was linked to a skin lightening product. So that was excluded from what you see here, but what we're pretty much indicating that at the 1 ppm level, there were still close to 30% of the samples which exceeded that. And there's a recommended threshold level of 0.58 parts per million, and just about 50% of the samples exceeded that level. So this tells us perhaps we need to delve a bit more into dietary exposure as it relates to consumption of fish. And this study was done in women of childbearing age, but we certainly want to extend this study at a national level and have an established program for mercury hair monitoring. Just advance one again. And as it relates to cosmetics, we would have screened again, well in excess of 150 samples, and we have at least 10 samples that were greater than 1 part per million, but we have a few that were actually greater than 1,000 parts per million. And the threshold we're looking at was 1 part per million. And this has triggered us to develop a draft regulation when it comes to such cosmetics and the potential for harmful substances to be in them. It has sparked quite a bit of discussion and angst, I guess, we are in some quarters, but this is an issue that we see that requires to be addressed. And we will continue this monitoring because these skin lightening creams come from all markets, and we've been able to track them through imports, essentially to all continents, essentially. Europe, within Asia, within Africa, and within the US, these products have come. Next slide. So the passive air monitoring, like I said, we would have established these sites, and Nevis, St. Kitts, Antigua and Barbuda, and you can see the sample devices are quite small cups, and within them is a activated carbon cartridge, and that is exposed for 3 months, and every 3 months we exchange. So we have to ship these cartridges to the countries. They come back to the lab and are analyzed. So it's been less than a year for the deployment, and we will continue to look at these samples over the coming years. Next slide. And we'll skip to the outreach. We would have developed this fish card where we looked at the omega-3 levels and the mercury levels, advanced one, and just to provide this to the general public so they can see what are considered healthy choices and what may be considered not so healthy choices. And based on the recommended consumption guide, persons can make an informed decision as it relates to the fish species. Next slide. We also developed a interpretive flyer, which encapsulates all areas of the project, and this will be for a wide dissemination on our social media and on the website created for the project. And within this, you can see the various matrices, the sampling, general findings, and the agencies that were generally involved in the project. And so over the period, we will also develop this flyer and expand it. And from this, we're also looking at scientific publications as it relates to some of the areas of concern. Next. So from a sustainability standpoint, it's important that at the end of this project that the monitoring does not come to an end. And that is the reason for the establishment of the network. And therefore, we would have established MOUs with these countries and institutions within these countries. And we will be continuing the strategic partnerships with the Biodiversity Research Institute and Environment and Climate Change Canada. And also, we are establishing certain national programs in collaboration with the Pan American Health Organization, because the human health monitoring requires further study. Fish biome monitoring will continue. And of course, our work with skin lightening creams and our ecosystem-based monitoring on bats, birds, soil, and the passive air. And of course, at the end of the day, this is all towards contributing to the effectiveness evaluation of the Minamata Convention. So my final slide, apart from saying thank you to everyone, just to leave you with a video that we would have created throughout our project. So if you could just give a quick listen, and thank you everyone for signing in today.
Mercury is a highly toxic, naturally occurring element. Due to man-made activities over the years, mercury pollution has become a major global concern. To better understand the impacts of mercury on human health and the environment, the Caribbean Regional Mercury Monitoring Network was developed. Aided by funding opportunities under the Minamata Convention on Mercury, the government of Antigua and Barbuda, through the Department of Analytical Services, developed an initiative to enhance the regional mercury monitoring capacities. With the Department of Analytical Services acting as the primary regional toxicology lab, an integrated network of existing laboratories across the Caribbean is being established. Sampling and laboratory capacity is being enhanced for mercury monitoring in the region. For the initial laboratory training and sampling designs, Biodiversity Research Institute was recruited. The Caribbean Regional Mercury Monitoring Network aims to build the capacity for sampling and analyzing biota and various media through the development of standard operating procedures. Protocols have been developed for the sampling of live birds and bats via catch and release methods to obtain blood samples and feathers or fur for mercury analysis. Analysis of these species provide a better understanding of the environmental distribution of mercury. Methods for the sampling of live-caught fish to test for mercury concentrations in muscle tissue is also a major focus area of the network. Analyzing mercury concentrations in fish species not only benefits research in how mercury may bioaccumulate in the environment, it also contributes to the understanding of how mercury may impact human health through regular consumption of potentially contaminated fish species. To further understand human exposure to mercury on human health, protocols have also been developed for the sampling and analysis of human hair, as well as the identification and testing of cosmetics, such as skin lightening creams, that may have mercury as an additive. The network continues to expand, with protocols being developed to test mercury in the air, water, and other media. The establishment of standardized sampling and testing procedures across regional labs will enhance the reliability of data for mercury monitoring regionally and globally. Through continued interregional collaboration, the Caribbean region as a whole will be better informed to protect the environment and human health from mercury.
All right, so thank you very much, and I just leave you with some of the shots from Antigua and Barbuda. Feel free to visit, and certainly thank you again to the Secretariat and the convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Linroy. That was a very informative and comprehensive presentation. Since we're low on time, I'll quickly go to our last speaker, which is Sonia Kathleen Faro Rios from Peru. She's a specialist in chemicals management, has worked in the government for a period of 10 years from the Peruvian Amazon Research Institute, the Environmental Evaluation and Control Agency, and currently in the General Directorate of Environmental Quality of the Ministry of Environment, where she leads the implementation of the Minamata Convention and the implementation of the law on the sound management of chemical substances in Peru. Ms. Faro is a SIP project focal point for the project in Peru and will present on strengthening capacity to control emissions and releases of mercury in Peru. Ms. Faro, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, for giving me the floor. As you said, I'm Sonia Faro. I'm from the Ministry of Environment. I'm representing Peru in this important event. On this occasion, I will be speaking about the project Strengthening Capacities to Control Emission and Releases of Mercury in Peru that my country presented in the second round of the specific international program. Next slide, please. Okay, I would like to start showing you the timeline that has been defined for the execution of this project. For this, it is important to indicate that this adventure began in 2017 when the Minamata Convention came into force, from which in April 2019, Peru approved the National Implementation Plan of the Minamata Convention on Mercury through the Supreme Decree 004/2017, Minamata. This instrument is consolidated as a roadmap for the implementation of the Minamata Convention in Peru and has 38 activities where different government sectors are involved. Understanding the purpose of a specific international program, in September 2019, Peru applied for these funds for the second round SIP through the project Strengthening Capacity to Control Emissions and Release of Mercury in Peru, which was approved in November at the same year. Considering that between 2020 and 21, we were going through the pandemic caused by COVID. In January 2021, the scale small funding agreement was signed for a period of 26 months. In March of 2021, the first payment of $89,000 was received, and in March 2023, the second payment of $32,000 was received after the submission of the progress report. As you can see, in March of this year, the 26 months of the project were complete, so it was necessary to sign an addendum for a maximum period of 10 months in order to compensate for the time that some activities could not be executed due to the pandemic. Once the addendum was signed, the amount of the second payment could be incorporated to the ministry for the continuation of the activities all the way to January 2024. which is the new project deadline. Next slide, please. The project has 4 milestones. The first is related to training to national institutions, representative in quantifications and reporting of emission and releases of mercury accomplished. The second one refers to the work plan for the updating process of the national inventory of emissions and releases of mercury available. The third one is about awareness about emission and releases from the interim storage of mercury and the disposal of mercury rise in stakeholders. And the last one is related to national plan draft for the control and reduction of emission releases of mercury, elaborate and presented for to relevant stakeholders. As I mentioned in the previous slide, Peru has a Minamata Convention implementation plan with 38 activities, 8 of which are being implemented through the SIP in this project. Next slide, please. Through the SIP for milestone 1, Peru now has a manual for implementation of the toolkit for UNEP and has diffusion material for our stakeholders in our country. Likewise, virtual and presential workshops has been developed to strengthen institutional capacities for estimating emissions and release of mercury from anthropogenic activities, achieving a training of 419 representatives of the government and private sector. And this was in 2022. And we have 62 in the current calendar year. Of this activity, the workshop on mercury reporting in the pollutant release and transfer register is still pending and will be held during this first week of November. And we can complete this milestone. Next slide, please. For the milestone 2, Peru has been able to develop 2 important technical tools for the management of mercury in the country. The first one is the document denominated identification of a stock of mercury and mercury compounds greater than 50 tons and mercury supply sources that generate a stock greater than 10 tons per year in our country, in Peru. And the second technical tool is the first update of the inventory of mercury emission and release in Peru. Likewise, a presential workshop has been developed for the diffusion of this inventory with the participation of 38 representatives of the government. Next slide, please. For the third milestone, initially it was possible to obtain a diagnosis of the transport and disposal of mercury waste in Peru, a document that later served as the basis for the preparation of the national technical guidelines for transport of mercury waste, and the environmentally sound disposal of mercury waste in Peru. Workshops were also held to disseminate this instrument with the participation of 53 representatives from the government and private sector. Of this activity, the development of the capacity building workshop for the interim storage of mercury is still pending, which will be held during the 4th week of November. Next slide, please. For the last milestone, it was necessary to have documents to serve as technical support for the development of the control plan. For this purpose, a diagnosis of point source of emission and releases and the national profile of chemical substance were prepared. With these inputs, the draft national plan for the control and reduction of mercury emissions and releases is being developed, which will be presented in January 2024. Next slide, please. In conclusion, for our experience, we can indicate the following. In subsequent applications, Peru needs to include the time for acceptance and incorporation of donation as part of the project execution schedule. This could be 3 months above. And another thing is that it's necessary to evaluate with the Secretariat the possibility of beneficiary parties having an implementing agency for receiving funds or administrative matters. This is because government processing times are long in our country. And finally, if the result is negative for this evaluation, it's necessary to include in the schedule the time it takes for each party to obtain the approval for each contract. It maybe could be 1 or maybe 3 months according to the amount of the contract that we can consider for the activities to complete our project. Next slide, please. Well, it has been a pleasure to present the achievement of our project in this second round of the specific international program. Thank you to the Secretariat to support all this time, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Faro, for that for your presentation. That was very informative. Unfortunately, we're running low on time, so we won't have a question segment to this. But if you have any questions or suggestions or comments you may have, you can send them to the Secretariat. I think the email is in the chat, and they will pass them along to the speakers, and they will come in contact with you with regards to your questions. I will now hand over to Ms. Marianne for the closing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and to all our presenters. I won't take any more real time from any of you. Your time is so valuable and you're doing this great, important work, but these presentations were so useful for us and for our listeners to get a sense of what the SIP really means at the national level and at the regional level. So I hope you've learned a lot. I particularly like the suggestions for what the governing board of the SIP might consider for the next 5 years of the SIP's life. And with that, I wish you much success in completing the projects if they're not already, for all the SIP project participants, and for all of you, much success as you prepare for COP5. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.